And good afternoon. It's a Friday afternoon here in the UK, and I'm welcoming Louise Purvis to the missioncast this afternoon, Missions Accepted missioncast, where we are all about trying to give you a bit of inspiration. If you're thinking that you might want to make a move, you might want to move away from your job either all at once or very slowly, then I'm speaking to some people who've done it, so you can decide whether, actually maybe you can draw a bit of inspiration and courage from them. So Louise, welcome to missioncast this afternoon.
Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, well, you were a primary school teacher. Yeah. And at some point you decided you were going to do something different. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what that story was for you.
So when I left university, I went and worked in an admin job for a couple of years. And then I just got this moment of clarity that I wanted to be a primary school teacher. So I applied to go back to university and do another year and do my PGCE. And that was all great. I loved teaching for quite a lot of years. But then things started to change and I started to feel really anxious and stressed out by a few things, mostly, the stress and, the fact that your to-do list was never, ever ending. And it wasn't things that were completely necessary, if I'm honest. But you still had to do them because, the bureaucracy and everything. And the deciding point for me was one day I was working with my class who were nursery aged, and I found myself clock watching, and then I had this thought that was, only 15 minutes to go and then I can get my work done. And I just had this sinking feeling. I was like, oh my gosh, these children are my work and I'm waiting for them to go home so that I can do my work. This isn't right. I shouldn't be feeling like I need the children to go home so I can do my work. They should be my work. And that was kind of the beginning of the end of me thinking, I've got to change. I've got to make a change here, because I loved the children. I loved working with them, but I was so bogged down with the other stuff. And teaching for me had not become about the children anymore. And I realized I needed to make a change. So when I left teaching, I had no idea. I had absolutely no clue what I was going to do next.
Can I just jump in there for a sec? Because that's quite a big thing to do, right? To just, make that decision. I guess with teaching, you probably have to sort of fit into academic years and things like that. So you can't just sort of leave at any time.
Yeah.
So you had to plan.
It was a conversation that I had to have with my husband, and I had a conversation with people around me and stuff. But as it was, I just literally left and took a job in a hairdressing salon. So I worked in a hairdressing salon, arranging shampoo bottles, taking phone calls and booking people's appointments in, making cups of coffee for people, making sure everything was tidy and nice, making sure, the admin was all kind of tickety-boo. And I did that to give myself breathing space. So I worked in that job for 6 months, and I was in the background just kind of setting things up. So I knew that I wanted to work for myself. I knew that I wanted my own business. I wasn't 100% sure what that would look like or what that would be. But I was just in the background whilst I was at the hairdressing salon, setting up a tuition business. So that's what I did first of all. So I tutored primary age children, aged from say 6, I think it was, right up until like 11, 12, when they had the transition between like primary school and secondary school. And that was fantastic. I loved that because I was doing the thing that I loved, which was teaching. And I really did get my love of teaching back then. And I felt like, my university degree and my PGC hadn't been like wasted. Because that was how I felt. I felt, I've put all these years of training and, I've put a lot into being a teacher, and sadly it hasn't worked out for me. And it can make you feel, I don't know, it can make you feel like, you know, you've failed. It can make you feel like, you know, because at that point, like back when I was in my early 20s, becoming a teacher was my mission. My mission was to teach small children and, you know, impart knowledge and help them learn. And sadly, it didn't work out.
It's a big thing, isn't it? That identity that you have formed for yourself, and part of making that switch is sometimes letting go of some of that identity, which is really challenging, isn't it? And you kind of need to test that with yourself a little bit about how you feel that and whether you're ready to take on something different.
Yeah, I really needed that time to kind of de-teach myself, really, because it was, like you say, it's your identity. And, you know, when you introduce yourself to people, new people, it's like, hi, I'm Louise and I'm a teacher. And then all of a sudden it was like, how do I introduce myself now? How do I, you know, what do I introduce myself as? Because at that point I was, you know, working in a hairdressing salon. I was starting my tuition business. And, you know, the tuition business was literally just something that I did after school and weekends. I found myself with all this free time during the day. It was like I was sitting around at home waiting for children to finish school.
Instead of the other way, when you're waiting for them to go home.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like twiddling my thumbs. Obviously I had the planning to do, a bit of admin, but that's when I learned about virtual assistants as a business. I had never heard of it before. And I thought, oh, that's something that I can do during the day, and I can run two businesses side by side. So I set myself up as a virtual assistant, and I absolutely loved that. You know, having the two side by side, and it was only when kind of COVID happened that you know, my tuition side of the business you know, dropped off a little bit because there was a lot of children didn't want to continue online.
Having been online all day, yeah.
Well, exactly. And you can understand it. And there was a lot of children that couldn't access learning online because of different issues. So I ended up growing the virtual assistant side of my business, and the tutoring dropped off a lot. But that's worked out really well for me because my little girl started school, and if I was tutoring on evenings and weekends, I would have barely seen her, because I'd have been picking her up from school and then going, see you later. So basically what I'm trying to say is it's evolved. My mission's evolved over the last decade, and now I work with people on their productivity and help them to become more organised within their business, because obviously I've done that for the last 10 years, helped myself, helped other people. So I'm helping people to grow their businesses by being more streamlined in how they run it. So it really has just evolved. I couldn't have told you 10 years ago what I'd be doing now.
Absolutely. So when you think about your business now, how would you define what your mission actually is? Because that's obviously evolved as you've gone along.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's completely different to what it was 10 years ago. I would say my mission is definitely, helping other people to grow their business and to launch new services, helping them behind the scenes with their business. Because that's where my real joy is, helping other businesses grow. Because I've grown mine and know how, the behind the scenes stuff works. I've helped people create their systems, and I just love watching, when people come to me and say, oh, I really want to launch a lead magnet, but I have no idea how to do it. I really love saying to them, right, well, you can do it like this, or just doing it for them. So there's those two sides to it, that I can either help them work out the steps, or I can just take it off their hands. So it's really nice just to be able to see that them come to me with this problem And then a few weeks down the line, they're like, I've got all these sign-ups, and my email list is growing and my social media is growing, and I just absolutely adore that. It's amazing.
So you're a bit like me in that your mission is facilitating other people's missions, which is like when you're someone who kind of wants to finger in a few different pies, it's a really, lovely position to be in, to be able to support seeing other people, do what they're doing with their missions and allowing that to go. And of course, part of your mission is to provide an income for your family and things like that as well. That's all as valid as any other kind of mission.
Oh, absolutely.
So what does it mean to you to be doing work that you're happy to get out of bed in the morning and do, basically?
It's amazing. It's just amazing to, I'm sorry, I just made my coffee. I don't want to spill it all now. Like, I used to drive to work when I was teaching, and I just have a knot in my stomach. I would be driving along and I'd just say, oh gosh, what's going to happen today? Or I'd be like, it's just filled with dread about the amount of work I had to do once I got home that day. So I'd get up and I'd still be thinking to the end of the day and how much work I was going to be doing that evening. Or, I'd drive home on a Friday and I'd be like, oh, I've got so much work to do this weekend. And, it's just that feeling of dread that I used to have. It's just totally gone. Now I'm excited. And when I got into the office, I'll tell you this, when I got into the office on Tuesday, after I dropped my little girl off at school, walked into my office and I just felt joy. I felt absolute joy at just opening the door. I hadn't been here for 2 weeks, and just the joy of being back in here, it was almost relief because I'd had COVID over Christmas. So I was like, a different environment, hooray. But I just felt joy at being back and being able to help people. And I get excited about work. And, sometimes I'm sitting in front of the TV on an evening and I've got to grab a pen and paper and start scrolling things down because I get excited about things. And maybe it's a little bit tragic.
No, well, this is what we want though, right? This is what we want.
Absolutely.
If everyone felt that way about their work, what a different world that we live in.
Yeah.
Do you miss anything about not working for yourself, sort of doing what you had to do? You can be perfectly honest and rich.
No. I miss the children. I sometimes take my little girl to school and I see all the hustle and bustle in the playground, and I sometimes think, oh, but then I remember how it made me feel. Really. It's lovely. The children are great, and if that was all that teaching was about, that would be amazing. But it was the other stuff, and so the short answer to that is no, I don't miss it.
So what do you think is the biggest challenge, like making the kind of move that you made?
I think for me it was just that identity thing and not knowing what I wanted to do at that point, but having the courage to just figure it out, to just take a leap and figure it out. Because it wasn't obvious to me, because I thought of myself as Louise the teacher. So it wasn't massively obvious what I was going to do next, but just having the courage to go, right, I'm going to take the leap and it will figure it, it will happen. And just having a bit of courage as well to try different things and go, right, well, this is going to work for me. Like the tuition worked for me when it worked for me. And then when it wasn't working, just having the courage to pivot and do something else. Because I don't think a job necessarily, some people do the same job all of their lives, but I don't think a job is necessarily for life, or a business is necessarily for life. I think you've got to grow and adapt and change as you see fit. But I think it is just having courage.
It's going to change so quickly. We're seeing all this AI stuff starting to happen, and it could be a completely different world for you in 5 years' time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So just to finish up on him, if somebody's teaching on the deciding whether to try something new for themselves, what would be your words of wisdom to that person or to yourself at that time?
If you are teaching and you don't want to be teaching anymore, I would say, you know, just do a lot of journaling, a lot of thinking. You know, what are your skills? Where else could you use those skills? Not everybody can just leave. I understand that completely. So, you know, have a think about how you can use the skill, because it's amazing the skills that a teacher has. And you think that you can only use those with children, but actually they're really adaptable. And just having a really good brainstorm around the alternatives, what brings you joy, what lights you up, and you know, just give yourself some space to think. When you're in teaching, there's no space to actually think because you're just constantly doing. And if you can, just get yourself some space to just have some thinking time. But I would say absolutely, you know, just go for it if you can. But there are other jobs out there. There are other businesses that you can run. So
yeah. And I bet they were delighted to have you at the hairdressers for that time while you were figuring all that out. So
great receptionist.
Fabulous. Louise, thank you so much for joining us. And we've obviously got your contact details in the description. So if anyone is looking for some support, VA support and productivity support, then Louise is right on that, especially if you like Trello, which I have to say, I'm a Trello lover. And yeah, so thank you so much and have a brilliant weekend.